Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us tonight on In Focus. Helen Zille says she plans to sue Johannesburg Council Speaker Colleen Makhubele over several statements she considers defamatory. The DA Federal Chairperson specifically mentioned Makhubele's statement that she sought to take over Joburg so she can lay her hands on its 70 billion rands budget. Zille added that the council speaker insulted her as a bully who interfered in the affairs of the city from Cape Town. The spat comes barely a week after Johannesburg coalition partners ousted former executive mayor Dr. Mpho Phalatse. Helen Zille joins us now to take us through her thinking around this. Helen, good evening and thank you very much for your time tonight here on In Focus. So the comment is the stunt from, this was another stunt from Cape Town to try and run the city of Johannesburg from there. What she did was unlawful and unethical. She's an arrogant bull from Cape Town that thinks that she is bigger than other bulls in the kraal. These are comments that are said to have been attributed, at least, to Colleen Makhubele. You're finding that defamatory and you're finding offense with that?
Well, you're quoting from the article in the Star, written by Tumeleng. And it was, amongst other things, the things that she said in that article, which are defamatory. My lawyers have confirmed that they are defamatory. I'm not going to repeat them on public television because I don't repeat defamatory things on public television. But you're reading now from the article in the Star, and those statements were highly defamatory.
In your view, the conversation in itself is sparked from, of course, the confusion and the chaos that was happening around, for example, firstly, her wanting to be speaker and the DA saying, no, she's not speaker. Next, of course, is the whole entire breakup of the Johannesburg City Council coalition that was a multi-party led by the Democratic Alliance. At the heart of it is that national, and by national meaning you yourself, wrote a letter to the fact that what the other partners in the coalition were requesting would not be done, because you were saying, here's an agreement, it's being signed, it's illegal, we can't do that, and therefore they felt that that is being bullied. I mean, is that your understanding of the context of where that comes from?
No, it's not my understanding, Thabo. It's not my understanding at all. We have such a thing as the Coalition Technical Task Team, where representatives of all the parties come and meet online and sometimes in person, but mostly online, to manage the day-to-day affairs of the coalition. And I have posted things on there, and this has nothing to do with the issues that you mentioned specifically. What clearly has happened is that practical and routine and informative information that I have put on that group, that WhatsApp group, which was supposed to be a working group, has been sent out of that group and reached Colleen Makhubele, and she has put 1 and 1 together and made 11, got completely the wrong end of the stick, made wrong deductions, and then made public accusations against me. That is the problem. Colleen Makhubele's ambition to go way beyond the position that COPE was given in the multi-party agreement is one of the causes of the breakup of the coalition in Johannesburg.
What does Colleen benefit from defaming Helen Zille?
You have to ask Colleen Makhubele that. I mean, anyone who's worked with Colleen Makhubele will give you quite a colourful description, I think. And Colleen Makhubele was the single representative of COPE in the council, and she was the chair of chairs. That was the position that COPE got in the coalition negotiations. And as the chair of chairs, she takes the speaker's chair only at times when the speaker can't be there in a particular meeting. So if the speaker takes a tea break, or if the speaker goes to the toilet, or whatever happens in that meeting, the chair of chairs will take over. Colleen Makhubele interpreted that as being the deputy speaker. And of course she knew that if she could ask the speaker, as she thought being the deputy speaker, she would become the speaker. And the first thing I wrote in the Coalition Technical Task Team group on WhatsApp was, Colleen Makhubele is not the deputy speaker. The chair of chairs is not the deputy speaker. There is no such thing as a deputy speaker. And of course she took grave exception to that, because some people can't face facts and they find it highly insulting when you prick their bubble. And the next thing that she took great offence to was when I shared something that I'd been told from the coalition on that group, twisted it around and said I was giving instructions to the coalition. It was quite the opposite. They were telling me what they intended to do. I certainly wasn't telling them what they should do. And it is this kind of distortion and manipulation, and then the drawing of fictitious conclusions, and then the leap to total defamation that needs to be stopped. I'm used to being defamed.
Yeah.
People defame me regularly. But politicians are supposed to have a much thicker skin than other people, and the courts expect us to.
Yeah.
But now and again, somebody just goes too far. And Colleen Makhubele, and I'm not going to repeat some of the things she said, has gone a bridge too far. Julius Malema did the same thing when he said publicly, and it was published in the newspaper, that the men in my cabinet had all been promoted to those positions because I was having relationships with them, improper relationships with them. And that was a bridge too far, and I successfully sued him. And I believe that in this case I will successfully sue Colleen Makhubele.
Yeah.
Or at least get an apology from her. But the bottom line is
you're saying you're used to being defamed. So there are lots of things, for example, that could have been said by members of the Patriotic Alliance, for example, on the day of the motion of no confidence against the mayor, said particularly against you and Helen being arrogant and so on and so forth. You say you don't find those things to be defaming. You're quite okay with that kind of language.
I'm not okay with it because, you know, people use these things as smoke screens. There is nothing arrogant about sticking to an agreement that you have just signed. And there's nothing arrogant about expecting people to abide by and respect an agreement that they have just signed with great fanfare. And when they try and break it just a few months later, because there's a better offer from the ANC, it's not arrogant to say, I think we should stick with the rule of law, and I think we should respect and honor what we've signed. There's nothing arrogant about that. If that is arrogant, then we can't run South Africa on the basis of the rule of law. Now, to say someone's arrogant isn't nice, but any intelligent person can see it's a smokescreen, and it isn't defamatory. But some things are defamatory, and that is where I draw the line.
Yeah. The other one could look at it and say, well, Helen is quite upset because Colleen Makhubele took her on and eventually succeeded in being the speaker, succeeded in unseating Dr. Mpho Phalatse. And so Helen feels quite aggrieved by this, and then she wants to take this direction to sue her.
We'll see what the courts say about Colleen Makhubele's power grab.
You're calling it a power grab? You're not calling it a democratic process that the Democratic Alliance applies everywhere else in other municipalities, like Nelson Mandela Bay, for example?
It was certainly not an appropriate democratic process. Due process and the rules were not followed. And we believe very strongly in playing by the rules of the game. And Thabo, before you draw any conclusions about whether this was a fair and proper process, let's wait for what the court says. We've got a case before the court on the ousting of Mpopalatse and the meetings that were held around that. Let's wait for the court's judgment.
Yeah. Now, I believe, and you've already said that you believe Soli represented you very well the last time I had a conversation with him around the situation of Mr. Mngwango in KwaZulu-Natal. But let me hear from you. I mean, Zwakele Mngwango says there is a growing culture of leaders being silenced in the party, and Mngwango saying leaders are prevented from freedom of expression, but Helen Zille was allowed free rein.
I don't know what he's talking about. I mean, that's a word salad. Zwakele Mngwango, as provincial leader of KwaZulu-Natal back in the day, sat on all the bodies, sat there when the policies were made, had absolute free rein to make any input, present any argument, differ with anyone. The DA is the one party that genuinely encourages free speech and different opinions in all its structures and in all its decision-making bodies. We are the one party that genuinely encourages that. And any honest person in any meeting that I chair will attest to the fact that I encourage differences of opinion, I encourage challenges, and not one person has ever been targeted or bullied because they disagreed with the leadership of the DA. But if you join a voluntary organization, as the DA is, no one coerces you, no one conscripts you, no one forces you to join. If you voluntarily join an organization like the DA, you sign up and you have a contract with the organization, and in our case, the contract is the Constitution. And one of our rules, the Constitution is very clear, we work with it all the time. No single leader gets to override the Constitution or tell people what to do. There are rules in the Constitution that we follow. And the Constitution is very clear on what is considered a disciplinary offence. And continually disparaging the party in the public unreasonably is a disciplinary offence in the DA. And when someone does that, as Zwakele Mngwango did, and bear in mind, he never raised any of these issues when he was on all the structures. Never raised them at all. But when he wanted a smokescreen again, because he wanted to defect to Action South Africa, he had to invent a reason of high principle behind which to hide a totally expedient decision. So having said nothing all the time that he was in the policy meetings, in the Federal Council, in the Federal Executive, having never said anything, he suddenly leaves and then tries to say people are intimidated, which they never are, never, and tries to say, well, you couldn't have your say, but disparages us from outside the party. But he was still a member. This is the thing. He was still a member. When he left, he said, I'm resigning from the provincial legislature, but I'm remaining a member. Now, if you're a member voluntarily of the DA, you sign up to the Constitution. And as Zwakele will tell you, because he's been there when it's happened before and he has never protested and never rejected this, if you disparage the party continually and unreasonably, and you're a member of the party, and you do that outside the structures of the party, then the Federal Executive decides to send you what is known as a cease and desist letter. And I took Zwakele's remarks at the request of the provincial leadership. I took Zwakele's remarks to the Federal Executive. They agreed that they constituted a violation of the DA's Constitution. And as I do with everybody else in a similar situation, I sent him a cease and desist letter, which said, you have violated X clause in the Constitution by continually disparaging the party publicly. You're a member of the party. Please cease and desist. And I presume he thought that was terribly bullying. He has sat quietly and approved other people getting cease and desist letters when he was on the Federal Executive and said nothing. So suddenly to find his voice when it suits him, because he's trying to create a smokescreen of principle behind which he wants to do something expedient, is very rich. And you, Thabo, should see through it.
Let's talk then about, are you worried, Helen, that more and more black leaders are leaving the party? Bongani Baloyi, Balintuli, Makashula Ghana, Zwelakhe Mwango, Zwakele Mwango, I beg your pardon, Van Damme leaving. Is it just coincidence that black leaders leave your party, and most of them, when they leave, they cite you as the problem?
No, they don't. They absolutely don't. I can tell you they absolutely do not. And you have invented that on the trot. Phumzile Van Damme has never invented me. Makashule Ghana has never invented me. I mean, this is complete and utter invention on your part, Thabo, and please find me the sources of that. I obviously had some disagreements with some people, but then I do with a lot of people. And they don't get offended and turn themselves into victims. And nor do I when they disagree with me. We're adults. We can have adult conversations. But it is totally wrong and a fundamental distortion to say that the DA is losing black leaders at a faster rate than any other party. I mean, Action SA, about 6 weeks ago, lost more black leaders in 1 week than the DA had lost in 3 years. And I hardly saw any reporting on that. Just yesterday, I think, a group called Activists SA, who are all breakaway black leaders from Action SA, launched a new party after they lost a whole swath of black leaders. Did you report on that?
So are you saying because Action SA, a fairly new party, you're comparing yourself to a party that was created yesterday, to the Democratic Alliance, that has been at this for a while, losing prominent black leaders. You're saying, oh, well, look at that small party, it's losing a lot of black leaders, which is, by the way, losing a lot of black leaders because it is in majority made up of those black leaders. The Democratic Alliance, not so much so in terms of what you look at in the hierarchy of leadership in the Democratic Alliance. So these black leaders are quite strategically placed and critical in terms of the work that the Democratic Alliance does.
Thabo, you must do your homework better, I'm afraid. There's only one fundamentally non-racial party in South Africa, and that's the Democratic Alliance.
What is the percentage of black membership to a white membership in the Democratic Alliance?
We don't count membership, but we count support.
Yes.
And if you look at support, 1/3 is white, 1/3 is black, 1/3 is brown.
And what is the makeup of your leadership?
Our leadership is entirely diverse. Our chairman is a person of color. Our leader happens to be white. I happen to be white. I've got 2 deputies, one black and one Indian, if you want to actually know the demographics. We've got deputy chairs of the party, Rufilwe Ntsege and various others. Our chief whip is black. We've got 451 black African public representatives. We are the only proper non-racial party. If you look at the ANC, Thabo, which I wonder if you ever do, they have a top 5 now because tragically Jesse Duarte passed away. Their top 5 is 100% black African and 100% male. Have you ever commented on that?
Yes, we have. Several times. Yes.
Well, you never make a big deal out of that.
No, we have commented on the formation.
Thabo,
so are you saying to us then, Helen, today that the comments made by Zwakele Mwango that you said we have tried to experiment with token black leaders in a meeting and that didn't work is not true?
I tell you, that is a fundamental untruth. It is a fundamental untruth. Tony Leon once said that the election of Musi Maimane as the leader of the DA was an experiment that went wrong. I didn't say that. What I have said before is that we don't put token people in any positions.
So that comment that he says he found quite offensive, offended by it, in fact, and raised it with you in the meeting, you're saying it's a complete fabrication of his, an invention, to use your word.
You know, it's quite amazing. I can well imagine that I said we must never ever appoint people as tokens in any position, because I believe that. And I will say that anyway. And so I can very well imagine that somebody might have twisted it around and said, aha, she's saying we're tokens. I've never said that. I've never implied that. But you see, in the new era in South Africa and in the world, I mean, it's this critical theory, it's this wokeness, everyone has to turn themselves into a victim to feel validated. So people twist what you say, they decontextualize what you say, and they have to find that it is highly insulting so that they can be validated by victimhood and so that they can feel somehow the need to be supported and that they have been failed by the organization, rather than perhaps sometimes doing a little bit of introspection and thinking, well, have I brought all of that I could have to the organization? Did the DA fail me, or did I fail the DA?
Helen Zille, as always, much appreciated. Thank you very much for coming on tonight and for engaging with us. DA Federal Chairperson Helen Zille there, responding to a number of issues, including, of course, her intention. She says she's been advised by her legal counsel to sue Colleen Makhubele.